Fantastic. Looking forward to it.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, today on our FridayLab videocast, we have a guest, and that's Bruce Pryor, nominated by Wilbert Molenaar, the one we had in our first videocast. We will talk probably widely about why the heart matters in business, and because of this introduction, you, our viewer and listener, will understand why. So, while Bart and I were still babies and playing around, Bruce has spent more than 30 years training and coaching innovative approaches to maximizing health and human performance. He was named president and CEO of HeartMath, and having helped launch the non-profit Institute of HeartMath with founder Doc Childre, if I pronounce that right, in 1991.
You did?
Which more people in the Netherlands really should know of. You are the co-author of one of the first management books to draw a research link between stress, resilience, and leadership performing, in his seminal book, From Chaos to Coherence, The Power to Change Performance. I would love to read that book. You have worked with a dozen of corporations, health systems, and government agencies across the US. And since 1997, you are the adjunct faculty at Stanford University's Graduate School of Business, as well as Stanford School of Medicine. Bruce is also a frequently asked speaker and international lecturer at many schools. A 2-year health crisis became an amazing healing journey, as we find at your websites, in which we definitely are going to talk more about. A very vibrant fact is that your professional career began as a singer-dancer and actor on Broadway, including 800 performances in New York, playing the boy in The Fantastics, the world's longest running musical. Now, I don't know this musical, but it sounds fantastic. And probably you still remember the entire play after 800 times.
I remember a lot, yes.
Today, we're going to hear about you reconnected to this passion again and integrated it also in your business, Renaissance Human and Vibrato, and why people call you the Renaissance Man. I'm quoting a very short text from one of your websites from the Renaissance Human, so that people up front will get an idea and that they for sure will stay tuned during this entire videocast. So, quote, today's Renaissance humans are the embodiment of a new profound appreciation of the magnificent potential of human consciousness to create a new world, rising like a phoenix out of a dying world created unwittingly by our predecessors and ancestors. These new Renaissance humans represent a revolution that is bringing technology, creativity, and heart together in the name of our deepest soul fulfillment and the next stage of evolution for humanity and for our planet. Whoa, we want to know more. So a big welcome to you, Bruce Pryor, in our 4th videocast.
And thank you, Ravni. Raf. Hopefully your mother isn't listening. I'll call you Raf.
Call me Raf. It's easier. So let's start with the first question.
Yeah, so it's such an extensive introduction because you've done so many things. This isn't probably even a complete list of everything you've accomplished and done. And so there's so many things to pick from. But just to pick one, a big part of your life you've dedicated to research about the heart, about the role the heart plays in business, in life, in stress. You founded HeartMath. So I think our most burning question is, so why is the heart so important? What would be your view on that? Why does the heart really matter? And what is your connection to the heart?
Yeah, we have what, 3 or 4 hours to answer that question. Is that gonna work?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's a well, and it's such a multi-level question, of course, because there's the physiological aspect of it. There's the practical aspect of why is the heart in business matter. There's the spiritual dimension of what is the heart actually, what is it actually beyond just the physical. So lots of dimensions of it, but maybe the simplest way to answer that is most people, I think, understand the idea that anything we put our heart into, for example, as Raf shared, I did a show a very long time, 800 performances, and I had to sing, a lot in each one of those shows. And when I was being trained as a singer, my coaches would often say, well, you have a beautiful voice, but when are you going to put your heart into it? So singing from your heart is different than just singing with a beautiful sound. And similarly with everything, I mean, you mentioned, Bart, you've got 2 kids. I don't know if they're soccer players yet, or whether they may become that at some point.
But they're girls, but it's still a possibility.
So if you were at a match of one of your daughters, you would probably say, go back out there and play with your heart, play with your heart. So throughout many cultures, this idea is prominent that if you're going to do something, do it with your heart. Why would that not be true of business?
Yes.
So if we are at our best, whether we're a singer, a soccer player, there's research, and this is one of the things that attracted me to HeartMath initially when we were beginning, when we were growing the company. If we could prove that when your heart was in a certain state, that actually helped your brain to think better and plan better and communicate better, that would be a way to validate that the heart was important to business too. Well, HeartMath was able to do that, was able to show that when we can control the emotions in our body that otherwise may cause us to feel anxious or very stressed or worried or fearful. I mean, we live in a time right now, I'm in the US, I'm right outside New York City. 2 nights ago, I was leaving New York City to come back to my home across the river. And all of a sudden, I was in my car, in the middle of hundreds of protesters all around me. And while I was not the enemy, there was a moment of like, what's going on? All of a sudden, all these young people chanting and whatever. But again, I was not the enemy. I was safe. Nothing bad happened. My point being, there are so many things that can worry us now.
Yeah.
So many things going on, wherever we live in the world. So what HeartMath discovered was that when you can take whatever emotions you're feeling and kind of like a wizard kind of alchemize them into something different, turn them into something better, not push them down, not deny them, that's using your heart in a very intelligent way. And what that means also is that when you're doing that, instead of your brain having to deal with all of the noise of the stress that you're feeling, or the worry or the fear that you may feel, your brain is able to operate on a much more effective level. So this is yet another way to answer the question of why does the heart matter in business? If we are operating more from our hearts, it's now very well established, not only because of the HeartMath research, but other organizations as well. And people like Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden, these people, I know all of them, are all saying the same thing, that our heart matters. And it's now proven. It's not just a nice metaphor, like, oh, sing with your heart. That sounds sweet.
Yeah.
But it's actually, there's actually evidence to say when you do operate from your heart, instead of from the fear and the anxiety and the stress, that puts your body, your heart, and your brain into a whole nother level of efficiency and effectiveness. And then there's another dimension. As I said, I'll try not to go on for the full 3 to 4 hours. But one more dimension to this is how many companies, how many of all types, do you want to continue to buy their products or buy their services because you feel so well cared for by that company?
Sure.
So your heart, in some level, is saying, yes, I want to. I mean, I sound like I'm doing a commercial for Lexus, but I love this company because they make really great cars. But not just because the cars are so good and very caring in detail, but also because every interaction I've had in various, whether I'm at the dealer, I'm getting the car serviced, they're good people.
So
They're
like
warm-hearted people.
their job.
I feel cared for. I
Yeah.
feel cared for. So it's not just they have a good brand and a good processes, but the way they interact with their customers, I feel cared for. So that's yet another reason to put heart in business, is that especially in a day like we are in now, where everyone is so worried about and everything is so uncertain, that we're looking for security. We're looking for any moment of stability. And like, I feel a connection. Like as soon as I met you two just now, a few minutes ago, I felt instant rapport with both of you. I knew I would, because you were so warm and friendly in the messages we had back and forth. And yet we had not met yet. So, but as soon as I saw you and heard your voices and you were speaking very warmly to me, I thought, oh, fantastic. This is great. And so that's what we all are looking for, right? We're looking for that sense of stability and security and safety. So our businesses need to try to express that if we want to hang on to our customers. If we don't care, if we just want to, they can go, I'll get another one or two. If that's their attitude, then yeah, I suppose you might survive for a week or two without heart in your business. But the final thing I'll say is that I don't know what it's like in Europe, say with the Bundesliga and the Premier League and all the big soccer footballers, but in this country with American football, these are massive people, huge, and it's all about the battle and very aggressive, very violent, and bad injuries happen many times. And yet, when one of the teams wins at the end, many times you hear the coach, who's the one coaching these, 150 kilo giants, and the coach is saying, my guys played with so much heart today. I love my guys. They played with so much heart. And I'll hear that and I'll say, when is a CEO going to say that?
Sure.
Wow, my people, we work with so much heart. I love my people. I wish, I long for the day when it's not just coaches of footballers that are willing to say that, but CEOs that realize, that recognize that when you play with heart, when you act with heart, you feel better, your colleagues feel better, the customers feel the care. It just works better.
Awesome. So in this whole dimensions in this this answer, I'm still curious about one other dimension, which is the personal dimension, your own passion for this. So we've established the scientific dimension and all the other, but what is your personal heart for the heart? What does it matter to you?
My personal heart for the heart. Well, about 30 years ago, before HeartMath was, HeartMath was in the formation stage, but it had not started officially yet. But I was already very good friends with the founder. I was part of the leadership of what was going to become HeartMath. And I remember sitting outside. I'll never forget the moment. I was sitting outside. There was a fire. It was in the evening, and a fire, kind of campfire happening. And I remember saying out loud, I am dedicating my life to the path of the heart. And I didn't really know what I was saying. I didn't really know what that meant. But it was an undeniable, not just an impulse at all. It was far more than an impulse. It was a sense of, this is why I am here on planet Earth now. It's to learn about and be able to share in some way the path of the heart. And so that certainty in my soul, in my heart, that I'm here for my heart and to help awaken it in others, has never wavered. Even when I went through some very serious health issues and emotional issues, there was no doubt that my mission is still about the heart and about love. And all the different things that I've done over the last 10 years, which has included singing again and dancing again and moving to New York City and coming back to a place that is chaotic and crazy and addictive and seductive and all that New York is. I never questioned that was still the fundamental reason why I am alive in human form on this planet now. And more so all the time, actually. I feel this more all the time, that especially now, the world needs more love, needs more compassion, needs more
And
forgiveness, more care.
Yeah, I totally agree. And what's the difference with 30 years ago? Because then I was 7. Like HeartMath started, and you got a lot of experience. So could you share a little bit about what you see, what you experience, what you feel that now in this time day is different from 2 years ago around this topic?
Yeah. I just wanted to change the background for you so it wasn't too boring seeing one angle of my car. Now you've got a whole nother view.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep it interesting for you.
I can't wait to be at a point in my life where I can afford a Lexus.
Yeah.
Well, they're not as expensive as you may think. At any rate, yeah, 30 years ago. Well, number one, even the idea of mind-body medicine was fairly new. The idea that our mind and our body were actually connected was a fairly new concept and not accepted. Still in the early stages of even being proven by science that the thoughts and the emotions that we go through actually affect our body. That was still a new idea. And I think, so what we noticed in the early years, so like in the 90s when HeartMath was growing and rapidly, and our base was right outside Silicon Valley in California. So Silicon Valley in those days, well, still, but in those days especially, it was a place where a tremendous amount of new things were starting, new companies, new ideas, new technologies being born all the time. And so there was an attitude of, let's try this, let's learn about this, let's try this. So there was a lot of very open-minded business people, more so than a lot of other parts of the world, because that California attracts a certain very innovative, very creative, very progressive kind of person. So we were able to take advantage of that in the sense that we had this kind of crazy idea that the heart and brain talk to each other, and that we were trying to prove that out scientifically. And we had enough companies and enough executives who would say, well, this is kind of crazy, I'm not sure I'm buying it, but you seem interesting. You seem like you know something. There's something about you, not just me personally, but the people from HeartMath who would be talking to companies or whatever. You're onto something because you seem more balanced than most people, or you seem to not be affected by stress like most people would be. So that we were seeing that. And then through the 90s, we started to do a lot of research, and it began to validate more and more, and that awakened other people. And I would say in the last 30 years, one of the biggest changes is how mainstream now things like mindfulness, yoga, many spiritual concepts were still, which then 30 years ago was still pretty alternative.
Yes.
Lots of people in California doing that kind of thing, but the world wasn't adopting it. Now, it's not like everybody is meditating, and yet it's very common, it's very accepted at a level it just wasn't 30 years ago. And so, a lot of that is because the science connecting the dots. And we have also people like Joe Dispenza to thank for this, and Bruce Lipton to thank for this, and Greg Braden, who are bringing science in to validate concepts which 30 years ago still sounded kind of California in a bad way, and a little too new age, if you know that term, a little squishy. That's another thing we would say. And so back then it was still, you really had to prove yourself. Now it's much more accepted, much more, it's much easier to prove. And now I can say I've been teaching these ideas for 24 years at Stanford University. That right there says a lot, because Stanford is like the #2 or #3 highest rated university in the world now. So if they've been supporting this idea for 24 years now, it must have some credibility. So it's a lot easier in many ways now. There's just a lot more general awareness. And I think a lot of people have awakened, not just because of HeartMath, but just in their own process of whatever they do, NLP, or they're coached by someone, or they have a spiritual practice of some kind. It's common now to hear people say, I want to learn to live more from my heart. I know my heart is awakening. This is language that's very common now. And so back then it sounded sweet. Oh, you're going to follow your heart. Oh, isn't that nice? Back to business.
Yeah. And
so it really, the attitudes have shifted. At the same time, back in the early 90s, we were saying, there's an epidemic of stress. Stress has never been worse than it is now. That's what we were saying in the early 90s. I look back now and I think, and that was before the internet, before mobile phones. And that didn't even exist yet when we were starting out. And we were already saying, because this was what the data was saying, that stress was arguably the worst it had ever been and was more costly health-wise, business-wise than ever. And you look now, almost 30 years later, and you think, wow, that was like nothing back then. We didn't have the internet. We couldn't have done any of this that we're doing now. We're on I'm on my smartphone. You're on your computers or whatever. We're all instantaneously connected via video. None of that existed.
True.
It's cool on one hand. Thank God for this.
Yeah.
So it's different.
So we have more, but we also do more in less time. So that makes a lot of people stressful. But I want to refer to someone you said it's more common. I have a few questions around that because I follow Joe Dispenza and Greg Braden and for years already, and I totally understand. And it seems so mainstream and so common. But if what I always do, I talk always about my inspirators and I show people, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "It's not so common here still." With a current client doing breathing exercises, it's like way out of their comfort zone. So do you believe it's like maybe more mainstream in America and the US than over here in Europe, or maybe even in the Netherlands, or maybe we are too much down to earth to get it?
Well, let me clarify. So I said it was more common, but not, as opposed to common. Yeah. So no, it's true. It's true. I mean, no question that I'm affected by the fact that I live for more years than you are, Raf, in California. And I lived in the Bay Area the entire time. And that area is arguably one of the most open, one of the most progressive. It's very common that people meditate. Many very common people are vegan and, go to week-long workshops, whatever. Very common. Very common doesn't mean the majority of those people who live there all do that. Not at all, but it's not weird. Whereas huge parts of America, it still would be weird, no question.
Yeah.
Here in New York, there's plenty of people that are open to Joe Dispenza and Greg and all that kind of thing, and HeartMath. But is it everywhere? Hardly.
No,
not at all. So I was trying to say that it's gotten more common. Interesting your comments about Netherlands. I've been to the Netherlands at least 15 times, maybe 20. And I started going in the late 90s for HeartMath. I think all of the trips were to teach HeartMath in major companies. Shell picked up HeartMath in the late 90s in London and in Amsterdam.
Wow.
Rotterdam. Isn't the Dutch headquarters of Shell in Rotterdam, actually, not Amsterdam. Whereas Unilever is in Amsterdam. Is that right? Unilever?
No, Unilever is Rotterdam.
Okay.
I don't know where it's situated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I've been to both cities quite a few times, and many other spots around Holland. And what interested me in all of those settings was that it felt more open in those groups inside these companies than I felt in most of the corporations in America. Oh. And I often would say, God, I love these Dutch people. They're all so open. It's all so easy. But I think I think so. It's interesting that your perception is that it's not, and I'm sure that's true. Again, we were finding the pockets of progressive ideas in companies. So we were finding HR people who had been doing this kind of thing, NLP, whatever, for years already, and they'd already been exposing people. And I discovered there actually were many people from Holland who did go to personal development workshops back in the 90s. It was quite a common thing from my experience compared to other countries. Compared to France, way more than France. Compared to Spain, way more than Spain. Lots of interest in the UK. UK's formal, UK. But I always felt part of why I've always loved to go to Netherlands was the general openness that I would find there.
Yes.
So it's all relative.
Yeah.
I think is it as much as it needs to be? No, we need to see a lot more people for their own sake adopting these principles of the heart and balance and coherence for their sake and their communities and their families, and to help us get through these absolutely crazy uncertain times.
And so what would be like the easiest ways for someone to do that? Because listening to your heart is quite an abstract idea. You can hear voices in your head, but people want to listen more to their heart, whether they're in business, in life, or whatever. People say that so much, but I doubt if people know how to do it. It's pretty abstract concept.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it is. Well, HeartMath, as one example of how you do this, is a system of actual techniques. And so one example, which is a step in the process of listening to your heart. Let me put it this way before I say the technique, and I'm happy to take you through this, is many people talk about, they'll hear a voice inside. They have maybe they call it intuition. I get these instincts, I get these ideas, I get these intuitions, and sometimes I listen to them, sometimes I don't. And so I think a lot of times people recognize that there is some kind of intelligence that they have, they often do not listen to. And it's because of stress, or it's because their mind doesn't shut up. And then later on they think, I knew I shouldn't have done that. Didn't pay attention to my heart or my intuition or whatever they call it. And so I think that's understood. You kind of get a whisper, you get an idea, and think, I need to do that. And then you don't. Darn, why did I do that? Or the opposite, right? So I think people can relate to that. They don't necessarily call it the heart. It's like an intuition, a flash from somewhere. We're saying, your heart is connected, but more importantly, if you can learn how to lessen the noise of the emotions that we have because of being locked down, because of riots in the cities, because of whatever is the issue, the fears about the virus, whatever. If we can quiet the noise in our system, the stress, meaning the stress noise, what emerges is there is this intelligence, which is called the heart. We call it the heart, and there's other forms of intelligence too that you can hear at a level that you couldn't hear otherwise. So it's like your own intelligence that you have access to if you can quiet the noisy part of your intelligence, the one that's busy all the time with worries and deadlines and all that level of it. So it's kind of like in Joe Dispenza's language, or the language of brain science. High beta level brain waves is great if you got projects you got to do and you got to be really zippy and really on top, and that's fantastic for that type of life that you need. But if you need to be reflective and coming up with a creative idea, that high-speed brain energy is not necessarily brain energy you need to get it to a deeper level of creativity or what your heart's really trying to say. So learning how to bring the volume down on the emotional reactiveness and then change those emotions into something more positive is a step in being able to then hear what this instinct, what your heart, what your gut, whatever you want to call it. I believe it's the heart. So does HeartMath, so we call it that. But you can call it Fred. Your inner Fred.
Good name, though.
Your inner Ralph. It's a good name. I think my ex-father-in-law was named Fred. He was a wonderful man. So and part of that process, would you like me to share a technique? Would that be helpful? It's related
yes,
to
please,
this?
yeah.
Yeah, sure. So the quick background is that HeartMath discovered that whatever emotional state we're in, whether that's chaotic and stressful, or smooth and harmonious, loving, joyful, passionate, we discovered that what we would think of as positive emotions, happiness, joy, love, compassion, produce a waveform in our heart that looks like this smooth sine wave. I'm going to keep following my finger. The wave is smooth.
Yes.
Whereas when we're feeling stressed, anxious, fearful, frustrated, any of those feelings, the pattern is all jagged and jerky. It's unpredictable and chaotic. And that happens to all human beings, and the only variable is the emotion that they're feeling. If they're feeling super stressed, it's a chaotic rhythm. If they're feeling happy, loving, caring, the rhythm is very smooth. So you can learn to control that, which is what the first major discovery of HeartMath was, by breathing and by changing your internal state into a more positive state, like a feeling of appreciation, for example. So basically, we're saying all human beings have the ability to control what's happening in their heart by simply focusing on it and breathing in a gentle, even way. And at the same time, then finding things that you're grateful for in your life, or happy about, or joyful about, or even funny things. So it's a combination of those three things allow our system to come into what Joe Dispenza talks about all the time as heart coherence. And if we're into a state of heart coherence, that enables our brain to be more coherent, and therefore, if our brain's coherent, it can operate at its highest levels of efficiency and effectiveness as well. So to get to the heart coherence, there's 3 steps. First step is to bring our attention. In fact, right now you can do this, and unless you're driving, close your eyes. And you don't, the 2 of you don't look like you're driving, so you can try this with your eyes closed. So bring your attention to the area around your heart. And you're focusing on the area, like the energy center of the heart, as opposed to the organ. You're not trying to visualize your heart beating in there, just the energy of the heart itself, that area. Focus there, and now breathe as though you could breathe in through the area of your heart, like a column of air coming into your heart. And then as you exhale, exhale out through that same process, like there's a column of air going up the heart. And breathe in again to the heart. And breathe out through the heart. And do that one more time. Breathe in through the heart. And breathe out through the heart. And now keep that steady rhythm going. You're breathing in and out about 4 or 5 seconds each way. So nice steady rhythm, a little deeper than normal, right? You normally wouldn't breathe quite so deep as this. Just keep doing this in a nice, gentle, easy way. And now I want you to think about things in your life that you're grateful for. It could be a certain person. It could be your pet. It could be it's spring. It could be, thank God they're easing the restrictions and we can actually be outside now, or we can actually go to another country, not just our own country, our own city. Whatever it is, just focus on things right now and feel gratitude for those people, those situations, those parts of your life that you feel are wonderful now. Just and breathe that in and out as you inhale and exhale. In a moment, I'll suggest you open your eyes back up. Okay. And so one of the ideas of HeartMath is that process of just bringing your attention to the area of your heart, breathing through the heart in a gentle, easy rhythm, not forcing it, you don't have to go like, hold it for a while, it's just easy, normal, but a little deeper than normal. You do that, and then you also add this quality of the positive emotion like gratitude, love, anything that's positive and really feels good in your system, that process awakens an intelligence that exists in the heart itself. And this was one of the big breakthroughs that HeartMath became part of in the mid-90s, when it was discovered that there is a nervous system that controls functions of the heart that's found on the heart itself, which is in direct communication with the brain up here. And as researchers looked deeper into this nervous system in the heart, they said this has all the qualities of a brain. And those, I think you're familiar with the work of Grant Susalu, membraning, and I believe you are. And that's when we met, was because of that idea that the brain in the heart is intelligent. The heart's not just a pump, pumping away and filtering impurities and whatnot. It's intelligently communicating with globally, but especially with the brain. So this idea of following the heart starts to make more sense when you realize, oh, there's actual intelligence in there. It's not just a pump. So if we were to say, follow your pump, what? Why would you follow a pump? But if it's intelligent, it's actually giving you insights. If it's actually giving you, I mean, for example, I bet both of you have had the experience of instantly feeling connected to somebody. Like you just meet them and like right away you feel connected. And there's no necessarily mental reason. It's not what they're wearing or their cologne. It's just you feel a rapport. HeartMath research would say the way you felt that was in the electromagnetic field of the heart. You may have actually felt good here.
Nice.
I remember when my daughter was born 33 years ago. Yeah, 33 years ago. And the incredible moment when the doctor handed her to me, and she was like 5 minutes old or whatever it was. And I thought, oh my God, and the love and the amazement, and I felt it here, right here. My heart was just going, wow, what a moment this is. I will never forget that moment. And so, you know, part of what we figured out, what HeartMath figured out, is the reason your heart could feel that is the heart is a sensory system. It's picking up energy from outside it, from from life around us, from other people. HeartMath did research on the electromagnetic field of the heart back in the early 90s and discovered that every human being, every time our heart beats, a field is created. Joe Dispenza talks about this too. In fact, he uses diagrams that HeartMath actually first created back 25 years ago. Joe is a friend of mine, so I quote him liberally because we're good friends, and I have massive respect for him as a human being and his work. I vouch to him. I am actually wearing a shirt of a week-long event. I didn't realize that I went to with him in the desert in Palm Springs, California, back in February. Yeah, Footprints of Consciousness. This was a Joe Dispenza week-long event. So anyhow, the heart. This is the essence. I could talk for hours again, but I think I'll just pause there and see what questions you may have.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Please.
Go ahead. No,
that was it. I was just going to ask you what you wanted, what you'd like to ask.
Sorry again. So about the magnetic field, do you believe that, and yeah, for me, I do believe it, that you can sense that, but in businesses, that if a lot of people have stress and you are in that corporate environment, that we can make each other sick only based on if it's so stressful work. Is it unhealthy to be in that environment?
It can be, absolutely. I mean, when you think about buildings and the toxic level that some of them have because of the materials and lack of environmental safeguards, and then you add to that the kind of emotional toxicity of people, there's no question that, and this is what I start to say, that the heart, every time the heart beats, for all human beings, electrical signal is produced and a magnetic signal is produced. That's what happens. It's called the EKG or ECG, the electrocardiogram. And that's a measurement of this electrical output that the heart's producing every single time it beats. Every system in the universe that has electrical energy creates a field. That's what electrical energy does. And so the heart, which is the biggest generator by far in the human body of electrical and magnetic energy, is producing a field. And that field can be measured with standard hospital equipment several feet outside of the body. It's believed that it probably extends several meters outside the body, if not farther, but we don't have the equipment yet that's quite sensitive enough to pick it up. But here's why this is relevant. So if you're in an environment, in an office, especially an open office, where if this is true, everyone in there, their heart is putting out a field, electromagnetic field. Physicists would say that's true. That's just a physical fact. It's not New Age concept. It's not spiritual. It's just a fact of how physiology works. What we figured out was that what's going out through that field is totally dependent on our emotional state. So if we are feeling stressed, if we are feeling anxious or frustrated or fearful, what goes through that field is that emotion. And we can measure that. And again, I can't show this to you right at the moment, but it's easy to demonstrate. And the opposite is also true. If you're feeling warm-hearted and loving or calm, that's going out through your field. And so this helps to explain the phenomenon of being in the presence of someone who is an appreciative person, a grateful person, and feeling, oh, I love being around you. It feels so good. But you haven't hugged them. You just feel how good it is to, their energy just feels so good. A happy person, you just want to be around them. A stressed out person, whoa.
Yeah, bye. Yeah.
So the field is real. And so this is why people like Joe, as part of the healing process, Joe, I sound like I know, I do. We texted just the other day. So why he's so insistent that large groups of people learn how to do this as a group. Because imagine all these fields, as they get more coherent, become more powerful.
Beautiful.
Because
it's
when
so
they're all
easy,
incoherent,
right? It's so easy.
It's
if
not
you just
that
do
hard.
a little exercise, we just did. And I do this every morning. Just take 5 minutes of breathing and appreciation, and you can feel it in your whole body that it's shifting your state.
Exactly.
And it's scientifically proven. So there's I love the idea of doing this with groups, or imparting this as a ritual in companies, which Raf does a lot. And also that makes me curious about, because if it's a ritual I have, it's a ritual you both have. So what it is that you do to keep your heart healthy, or your state to be in a good place, in a good state. Do you have any rituals?
Change the view again one more time.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah. Actually, I'm changing my knee. It's to help my knee. I'm changing knees. I vary it. I don't. Keep in mind, I've been practicing something like what you just asked for 30 years. So my practice now, it changes from day to day somewhat, depending on what's going on in the world, depending upon what my day may be like. But so often it includes an element of reading of some deeply inspiring book. I'm in the middle of some books right now called The Life and Teaching of the Masters of the Far East. Life and Teaching of the Masters of the Far East. It's one of the deepest spiritual books about the heart and love and the nature of consciousness that I've ever read. It's a series of 6 books. So I'm loving spending 10, 15, 20 minutes first thing in the morning kind of reading this wisdom. It's very powerful. It goes right into my heart. It's how it feels. And I'm also currently infatuated with a certain piece of music, which is, I actually heard it in a meditation of Dr. Joe one time a few months ago. And I use that to kind of help me induce a very deep heart, coherent, beautiful state in my heart. And so I spend, this whole process is probably an hour, but it's variable. Like now the weather is nice. I get down early in the morning and go outside and sit overlooking the Hudson River in New York and looking at the sun as it's coming up. And I don't get to do that in the winter. So I'm doing it now. So my practice changes depending upon the season, depending upon the, kind of what's going on in the world. And sometimes I'll spend more time. I'll say, I need 2 hours today because there's so much going on and my system is so sensitive to some of this. And I need it for me. I need 5 minutes, not going to cut it today. Today I need more. And I'll take it because to me, that's job one, and is to take care of oneself in these ways. So I'm not saying you have to do an hour, because for me, I started with probably 10 minutes in the morning. And I'll add that in the early days of HeartMath, a lot of things that we would recommend to people is that in addition to doing 5 minutes or 10 minutes of appreciation or gratitude first thing in the morning, which is fantastic, also periodically through your day, do 1 minute, 30 seconds, right before going into a meeting, right before a phone call. I jokingly say, but this has been true for me, with smartphones, sometimes you're getting a phone call you didn't expect, and you look down at who's calling you and you realize, I have to take this call. But you have about 5 rings before you actually have to pick up. At least on my phone, that's the way it is. Which means I have a few seconds to get myself coherent first, if I want. So my point is, in addition to 5 minutes or 10 of gratitude in the morning, also find moments in the day where you can just do a minute or do 2 minutes, because our system can easily, very subtly slide out of coherence because of the stresses and pressures and speed of our day. And we don't notice it. It's not something extreme. It's not like suddenly we blow up. We just gradually a little bit less effective. So wouldn't it make sense to just take a minute and bring it back? And that's really quite possible. When we were creating all this in the early 90s, I had one of these watches that it'll go off on the hour, alarm will go off. And I would set it to go off every hour. And every time the watch went off, I would practice that technique I just gave you guys, that we call it quick coherence. I'd focus on the heart. I would breathe slowly through my heart. I would feel gratitude. Every time, every hour, at the top of the hour, I could be in a meeting, I could be on a phone call, I would just do that. And I got good at it as a result. And there was a continuity built in my system of following my heart and putting out gratitude and appreciation to people, to life, that became an ingrained habit because I kept doing it, not just when I had to do it. So those are some suggestions of how to make this real, practical.
Really cool.
Do it when you don't need. Do it when you don't need to.
Yeah, yeah. True. That's where it starts.
Like a marathon runner would not start training the week before the marathon.
True. True.
The marathon runner would be doing little bits and little bits and little bits and building up continuity. And then when the big stress, also called the marathon, happens, they know what to do. So that it's the same analogy for us. We can go through. I'm a cancer survivor. I got a diagnosis of bladder cancer 11 years ago. Rocked my world. But I'd been already 20 years of practicing going to my heart. My doctor kind of couldn't believe my reaction. He's like, wow, you're doing awfully well with this news. And I said, well, I'm very clear. There's a thing called a fork in the road. Right now, there's 2 choices. I can go the path of I am going to do my best to be in gratitude and take what happens, or I can go the path of fear. And I know that's the easy one, the fear one.
Yes.
But I'm going to do my best not to go that way. And because I know too much. I know too much about the power of the heart.
Yes.
And this, again, what people like Joe and Greg and Bruce Lipton would all say is that we have the power to choose and take that right hand forward.
To change it.
And that's where the heart comes in. And so I think part of what's cool about all this, and I go back to your question, Bart, about how does it follow your heart, not just be abstract, is that the science now has caught up. And so now the science is so clear because of HeartMath, because of Joe Dispenza, because of many other people as well, that the heart is a rocking organ. I mean, it just rocks. It does so much. It is so vital in our whole system, way more than just the fact that it's a pump. And so the knowingness of that is part of why we do it. because we're activating a system every time we breathe through the heart and love someone when we would have judged them, and feel gratitude for someone instead of being irritated with somebody. And
yeah, and it's so funny that you say that.
I like talking about this stuff.
And what you said, like choosing fear seems the easiest way, and maybe our life is changing, and maybe it's difficult to feel more gratitude, but that should be the opposite, right? That's the easy way to go for that. That we find a way will become more common sense to choose love, to choose appreciation, to choose working on that muscle, to strengthen that for those times. So yeah, I truly believe that's resilience. In bad times, it's how do you hold the space for yourself? How do you respond instead of react? Because I don't know how it feels if you get a message like that, you have cancer, what happens in your system. But I can imagine first response is like your body goes into kind of lockdown, or and then to be resilient, or to allow those fearful feelings for a while, and then to be able to transform that into, okay, but how am I going to deal with this situation? So maybe that's not only in how you deal with sickness, but also in relation to this current COVID corona crisis. Are you allowing fear to rule your life, or are you choosing, I'm going to be my own ruler in which emotions I choose and let in? But yeah, being an entrepreneur myself, it took some time to come here, right? And to gain that consciousness.
Yeah. And that's a great, I mean, this time is such a great example, because when you see how people have reacted to how, we're still, my state here in New Jersey, we're still under stay-at-home orders, at least for another 4 days, I think, and they may keep extending it. So we're the second worst in the entire United States, second only to New York. And the only reason we're second is we're a smaller state. So it's been, I mean, in my little county, almost 2,000 people died in my county, in one state of 50 in the United States. So it's been extreme over here. So I think a lot of people, in the case of it being shut down, at a certain point, just want to start blaming people. They want to blame some conspiracy theory. They want to blame some bad decision that happened in China or in Italy, or they want to blame and blame and blame and blame, because it's so frustrating to not have the things that we're used to that fulfilled us, like touch, like being able to hug people if you're a hugger, like being able to interact in person and not just on Zoom, like being able to freely get out in nature and not worry about and have to wear a mask all the time. There are all these things that feel like we're in a prison, but at the same time, and so we want to blame. And so we want to find somebody that we can blame, because it just feels better to at least have somebody to blame, instead of, well, you can try to find somebody to blame, but like I used to say to people who come to a HeartMath workshop, and they would say, well, who really should be at this workshop is the boss, the CEO of the company. He's the main problem. I said, well, he's not here, is he? So what are you going to do about that? What is there in your attitude that may need to change about the boss? He's not here. We can't force him to come. And then what I noticed was many times somebody who would have said that initially, I'll see him a month later. I'll say, so how's it going with Joe, the guy who never came to the workshop? She said, the relationship is much better. I'm much more forgiving now. I said, awesome. I realized I don't know what pressures he's under. I have any idea what his life is like. He could be having a terrible board that's in charge of the company that's treating him like a slave, and so he passes. I don't know. So I need to be more warm. So it's amazing what if we can change our state and say, like in a situation today, that where so much is not comfortable, so much is not. I mean, everything's uncertain, everything's unpredictable now. Well, what can we appreciate? What can we feel grateful for? Because if we can stay clear and strong in ourselves, like I'm personally right now, I know I'm talking a lot, and but you guys are wonderful people, and you're so receptive. Your energy is so receptive it makes me want to talk more, so I should shut up. But
No, don't yell
my
out.
point is, I'm grateful. I'm grateful because I can feel how warm-hearted and appreciative you are, and you're listening, both of you. So I thank you for that. So I'm saying that the more we can, in any situation, what can we find that we can be grateful for right now? And that's not to say ignore what you're upset about. Don't talk about what you're upset about. Not at all. You should see me on Twitter, given the current political situation in our country. I am not pleased. I am not just lying down with what our government is doing. Not at all.
No.
And at the same time, if I'm not careful, that frustration will turn into negativity in my system that doesn't get released, and then I become part of the problem. I'm not helping if I'm just reacting kind of with a similar energy as what the action is that I'm against.
Mm.
So anyhow, this is all fun to talk about, and I appreciate all your guys' insights too.
Beautiful saying. So, Bruce, if you just mentioned like CEOs, and what could other CEOs learn from your experience in life? Or what's a message from heart you would say to, or maybe directors or managers in companies that are maybe the real change makers in organizations?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I'll say is something that's being said by a lot of people, and Brene Brown, I think in particular in America, we have to give a lot of credit to her for kind of giving voice to the importance of vulnerability.
Yeah.
But I feel like we're at a time now where leaders especially have got to have another level of transparency beyond what feels comfortable to most of them. To me, the great leaders are open about the severity of problems, but also open about their ability to be open about what they may be going through and concerns they may have, worries they may have, but then can kind of rally everyone around a common goal. But to me, there is continues to be a need for managers, many of whom, of course, are men, and who would tend to not be this way, who would tend to withhold and would tend to not want to share what was going on. They would want to give the nice, strong, veneer. But people are part of what happens when there's so many directions to look, and everywhere you look, it's also stressful, is that people are highly sensitive now. In some cases, oversensitive. So the least little thing can be like, oh my God. But what that also means is they're looking at everything and looking at people and trying to see, what's really going on here with this leader? Is he or she really giving me the full story? And they're very carefully tuning in and listening, like, is this true, or is this just what he wants or what she wants us to know right now? And so as we would say, the bullshit meter is high. They're very sensitive. And so all the more reason why leaders and managers and really at any level need to have that level of openness about themselves and vulnerability about themselves, and especially to create space where that is acceptable in the team, because people are going through stuff and we have no idea what people are going through.
True.
What could be far more extreme than we have any idea. And without compassion and without opening up about whatever you could be going through, when you do that like just opens the door energetically for others to be able to do the same.
Yeah.
And so it's I think that's to me, that's kind of job one, is to say, I have got to be more honest. I've got to be more real than I may have been in the past, than I may be comfortable doing, because people need that now. That's what will give them the security, not just a good story.
No. So to create a space and to connect and reflect about also being a human being and everything that comes with. Yes.
30, 40 years ago, the idea was you leave your heart at the door. Don't bring your heart to business. Don't bring your heart to work with you.
No,
and any parent of a teenager would say, what? That's crazy. That's impossible. My kid is struggling with schools and with drugs, whatever. I can't just turn that off like I'm a thoughtless person. We are human beings and we experience these things, and you need to bring the fullness of who you are and what you're going through to your work. Does that mean you share every detail of your life? No, not at all. Be private, but leaders and managers especially have to be able to acknowledge what's really going on, or else people will not give their full energy. If they feel like they're not being told a full story, they will not give their full energy.
Yeah, true. And Bruce, could you share a little bit more about your work with Renaissance Human and Vibrato, and what your mission is with those ventures?
Sure. So after I got healthy, so I had cancer, I had staph infections in my blood, I had to have both of my hips replaced, and my mother died, all in less than 2 years, and my marriage ended. All of that occurred in less than 2 years. As I was coming out the other side of it, I realized I needed to sing again. And after my hips got stronger, I discovered I could dance again. And little by little, I became the fullest expression of my own creativity I'd ever been in my life. I was still coaching and teaching and mentoring organizations and executives, but now I was doing really things that fully fulfilled me, like singing and dancing and photography and things like that. And so little by little, people, friends of mine from business or just friends in life, would say, and they knew I had kind of recovered from a couple of life-threatening situations. They said, "You're like a Renaissance man. You're kind of reborn physically, but all these talents that you had, you're doing them again, and this is so cool." I kept hearing Renaissance man. I thought, well, there's one problem with that term, man. And at some point I thought, Renaissance human. That sounds way different. And so I began to develop ideas around what I meant by that, which is basically that we are all, every human being, whether or not you think you're artistic, every human being is born with the power to create life. The power to create another life is designed into every human being. That energy, that power that's designed into us is the same energy that we draw from to be creative in any way that we are creative. And creativity I define as that fundamental essential energy that makes us human. One of the ways it can be expressed is through art. Is through dance and through singing and painting and poetry and all those things. Other ways that it gets expressed are in business. Some of the most creative people are the ones that are in customer service, who take a very tricky, complex customer problem, and the way they finesse the conversation and the way they creatively handle the situation, the customer feels like, wow, thank you. That was great. I will buy from you again. Thank you so much. Well, that was a creative action, what that customer service person did. And tech support people can be some of the most creative people imaginable, because they're trying to find solutions on the phone for somebody whose computer is not with them. So I'm trying to help people realize that creativity is an energy that's in us. Some of us have had it encouraged our whole lives, but a lot of us didn't. A lot of us, we had the creative urge shot down throughout childhood, and in the businesses we're in, we're told, you know what, Raf, you're a great marketer, but don't get involved with the salespeople. Let them do their job. Or Bart, you're a fantastic strategy guy, but let the operations people do their. Stay in your lane, stay in your silo, right? So that's cutting off the creative energy. And we do that all the time to each other. We do that to our kids. We do that to the people that we work with. So to me, there's this massive amount of untapped, blocked creative energy that many people have. So I'm on a personal mission to awaken that. And so I teach courses, I facilitate groups around this, and I call it Renaissance Human. And I'm saying every human is a Renaissance human. It's not just a new label for the elite. It's that all of us have the ability to birth new parts of ourselves all throughout our lifetime. And it's not just the artists that get to do that. We all get to reinvent our life. And that can be in a small way, and that can be in a huge way.
I'm immediately intrigued. I'm just like this on my chair, because it's exactly spot on what I believe about creativity and how it can help us form our lives or design our lives and that it's not only something like creativity. Sometimes it looks like it's only for web designers, or it has this somewhere it has taken this turn where creativity as something you can do has become exclusive, where all people are creative. If you want to live, you have to be creative.
Exactly.
You have to be able to look outside of your box, and
Exactly.
tapping into that potential, of learning how to tap into that potential, can give you so much possibilities. So I'm immediately enthusiastic about the idea of Renaissance Human, as you're describing it. And also wondering, I can feel this, I can feel myself getting pumped up, but at the same time, then I'm immediately wondering, so what is the role, because we were talking about the heart, with creativity as well?
Yeah. Sure. Well, the essence there, and when I teach courses, as I'm doing an online course right now, actually, I'm drawing the link between, remember when I was drawing this picture with my finger of the smooth pattern the heart gets into when we're feeling love or gratitude?
Yeah.
Because that wave is very smooth and efficient for the heart, and because the heart communicates with every cell in the body, every cell, including all the brain cells, the brain is also receiving that beautiful smooth wave. And for the brain, that's like, the best protein drink ever. I mean, it's just like gold for the brain. So so what we're saying is that, and it goes back to this idea of play with your heart or sing with your heart. When you are really connected to your heart, everything feels better, and biologically everything is working better. So we have evidence, as does Joe Dispenza, and Joe is very big on this now, of helping people get into the heart coherent state, which then enables them to get into brain coherent states. And you would guess between heart and brain coherence, there might be some added creativity in the mix. So we're basically saying, doesn't mean creativity requires you to be in this perfectly coherent state first, but it's a facilitator of the process. So if you can get into a coherent state, meaning you're feeling your heart, you're feeling excited about a project, you're feeling enthusiastic about it, that state is more likely to produce creative ideas that and the energy that you need to follow through on the ideas than simply the energy of frustration or yeah, you may get a creative idea out of that, but you're spending a lot of energy in the process. Yeah. Why not have it be a more efficient energy expenditure in the process and feel better? And again, we're saying, any artist knows that there is often this dimension at some point where you just feel like you're in complete flow. There's no sense of time. It's just you and the canvas. It's just you and the stage. It's just you and the dance, you and the song. And I've experienced it in all of that except the canvas. I've painted in that way. So we call it flow. We call it flow state. We call it the zone. And HeartMath just came along and said, yeah, it is. And we can demonstrate, we can show you what happens in the heart and the brain when we're in that flow or in that zone. Yes. And it's repeatable, and it's because it's a system and it's a process that you can follow.
It's beautiful.
And what's cool about it is that you feel good when you're doing it. So.
And then you find more opportunities and possibilities to tap in that creative potential to design your life. It's so easy.
It seems so easy. It looks so easy.
Maybe people listening.
Well, and it's
teach me how. Starts with breathing, right?
Yeah, well, the breathing makes a big difference, because when you think about anything that you're trying to get good at, one of the steps, when I was first becoming a singer, I thought I had a pretty good voice, but the teachers had to work with me to get past the blocks. And the blocks in my voice were being self-conscious, were being afraid of singing in certain notes because they didn't think I could do it, a lack of confidence. Those were all blocks to the full power and strength of my voice coming out. Well, the same is true of any creative activity, including a customer service activity, or a lack of confidence that I'll be able to deal with this customer's problem effectively. That's a block. So part of anything you're trying to get good at, and creativity would be the same category. You got to understand where the block is. Is there fear? Is there lack of confidence? What's going on? And so that's kind of a step one. And when I do workshops, one of the things we do is we write a letter to ourselves from the voices of fear inside ourselves.
Oh,
so it's like, dear Bruce, I'm your fear. And then you what are the fears that are in you about, in my case, I'm a little older than both of you. The fear around aging, or the fear around what comes with being old, or fear about being alone, or fear about being judged as a dilettante or an amateur, whatever the fears may be, and being able to get in touch with what is really in there, because that energy is what's blocking the full expression of your creativity. So I could sing pretty well with fear, but I could sing a whole lot better without it.
Amazing.
Right?
I love the form of
the
letters. Yes, beautiful.
Yeah. So, again, there's a certain processes that HeartMath has in those areas, and that I've developed around this creativity Renaissance human idea that just help to get us past the resistances, past the blocks. And then once you're past the blocks, then it's a question of, wow, I've got all this energy available to me now because I'm not afraid of it. Yeah. And as I was explaining to somebody the other day, I think it was actually the class, said, many of you on this class, you've seen me before. You've seen me, I gesture a lot, especially if I'm not holding a phone at the same time. And I said, I did not used to be that way. This is post-cancer Bruce. This is the Bruce that allowed my creative expression to really go. I just kept letting go to it. I kept surrendering to it. And I am so much more expressive than I used to be. And people come and it's like, wow, you've got really amazing energy. And I said, thank you. It's just there. We've all got it. I've been on to trying to awaken it. And I find it's really cool, fun to live this way more so, than not. Because then other people are saying, wow, that's really cool. And you went through all that and you're feeling this good. Okay. Must be something to it.
Wow. That's amazing.
And I'm not 37. I'm a little bit older than that, right?
A little bit. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, but that's amazing, Bruce, how you overcame that, how you worked through that, and what you created out of that, your experience in life, and what your true mission is, and that you stay connected also to your passions, and that you're even like doing that even more than you did before. So I love to hear more and more and more. Just a slight notice about the time, because we're already talking 1 hour and 15 minutes. We can talk for hours, but I believe you still have something to do today. So if you're okay with it, and both of you, to round it up with maybe our last kind of key insights, maybe a burning question, maybe from you, Bruce, to us, or what you would love to share. So Bart, can I invite you to say something or ask something to Bruce?
Well, no, I just want to share that it's been a treat talking to you from beginning to end. I've been captivated by everything you had to say, and I really felt, as you said, I really felt connected, which from the start, yeah, so I'm grateful for having this conversation with you. I just want to thank you for your time and your energy in bringing into this conversation, sharing your insights with us, not knowing us beforehand, just like us doing this. Yeah, thanks. Nothing more than that.
Well, that's a lot. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Right. Beautiful.
So, and for me, yeah, of course, the same. Very grateful for you coming online with us as our fourth guest to our FridayLab podcast. I learned so much. I wrote a few things, but I'm going to do a total recap of insights to share with our viewers and listeners. because yeah, there's so much precious stuff that you gave us. We always end so before I'm going to ask you if there's something you're willing to share, if you would love to nominate someone for our next video cast, can be anyone. So that's up to you. And I also would love to, thank you so much for this moment. I always believe that it's not only talking and listening, but it's also like what Buddhists do, they initiate people. And I feel like a kind of initiation in this moment that you provided us with your knowledge and vibrance. So thank you. So yeah, is there anything you would love to share to end our video cast with?
Thank you. Thank you for asking. Well, actually, one quick thing that comes to mind, because I want to acknowledge Robert Erdbrink. And Robert is the one who really initiated the presence of HeartMath in the Netherlands back in 1999. And he's the reason I went to Netherlands so many times. And he still is extremely active. I think the website is HeartMath Benelux, because he has a significant network all across Europe, really, but especially in the Netherlands and Belgium and Germany and Switzerland. And he's quite active and a dear, dear friend. So people who would love to learn more about HeartMath locally for you, that would be the way to do it. I think, we talked a lot about connection, and thank you, Bart, for what you just said of feeling so connected right away. As I said, I felt with both of you. I mean, you're so open-hearted and so lovely. You're both lovely to look at, too. But the sense of connection, and I think it's something about these last few months where the ability to connect has been just so strange, because we all the ways we used to weren't available, and now this is available, and this is fantastic, because had it not been for this conversation wouldn't have happened. But I think the deeper issue is connection. And at this time in the world's history, there's so many obvious ways that we're just so disconnected from each other. They're just like have no idea what these people, what this country and the world, but especially this country is dealing with right now, of course, is this massive racism that has once again come to the surface, and people even feeling who felt like we are progressive and not racist, having to acknowledge, wow, there's ways I am not connected. I'm not really aware of what it's like to be Black in this country. I'm not really aware of unconscious biases. So my point is about connection, and to be able to go to your heart, and to be able to and to want to really connect with another person, to understand what they're going through, and for the best that you can. We can never really walk in the shoes of another person, but we can feel what they feel to some degree. And to me, every time we do that, we are enriched, even if it's a painful process. Every time the heart feels pain, the heart can grow, in my experience. I felt a lot of pain in my heart, but my heart's grown a lot, and I know it has grown. And so I feel like this is a time for connecting to the wisdom in ourselves that we get too busy to stop and listen to often. The heart's really a source of wisdom and intelligence. To connect to things in our life that really matter to us, and not pay so much attention to the things that don't really nourish us, and to be ever more creative in how we connect with others while we're still somewhat limited. Like there's certain friends that I haven't seen them without a mask in months. They haven't seen me without a mask in months. People that work in my building, for example, and just that, hi Tirsa, we talk through masks all the time because we're supposed to in our town. We're still required to do that, and so I can't connect in the normal way I'm used to. So how do you connect when there's some restrictions or limitations? The heart is the guide. If we can connect in the heart, we'll figure out the rest of it.
True.
Yeah, so true. But talking about connection, though, we have one more question, and that is, who do you think we should connect to? Being interested in these topics, loving to ask people about this stuff. What would be a person or a connection you would recommend us for our next podcast?
There's a dear friend of mine who actually lives in Lucerne, Switzerland now. She was in the States for some years. She's in the States. She's in New York right now. Actually, I'll see her tomorrow. Her name is Leila Salvade, and she's Swiss, a mix. She's Swiss and a lot of other things. And we connected because of HeartMath. So she is actually a HeartMath trainer, but her work is around the heart and heart intelligence, bringing it to the world. She's developed a method called the Standing Light Method, which is quite a beautiful process as I'm getting to learn it a little bit. And but she's an extremely eloquent person, has lived all over the world, has had quite an interesting, diverse life, and has a lot of wisdom. And she's your age, you guys, in the range of you. She's extremely eloquent in talking about the heart and humanity and issues that we're going through, the stresses and challenges that we're going through today. She and I are collaborating and actually going to be producing a series on YouTube of conversations between the two of us. And so she's somebody I would definitely recommend. She's amazing.
Thank you so much, Bruce, for joining us, for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. And we hope to stay in touch about beautiful matters of the heart and much more.
I was so honored to be with both of you, and thank you so much. And absolutely, let's stay in touch. People like us and millions of others, we need to stay connected to help the world. We need to keep each other strong and nourished. And it's hard for everybody in the world now. But for those who are particularly sensitive to others and to the issues, the complexity of the issues, we need to support each other, especially. So I look forward to doing that.
Thank
Awesome.
you. Okay.
Thanks so
Awesome,
much,
guys.
And
yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. A treat to be with you.
have a nice day. You can do the remainder of the day. Are you going to stay in your
Thank
car the whole day, just doing calls and stuff? Or?
No. I'm venturing outside to see what it's like outside.
Oh, wow.
Really nice. Thank you so much, Bruce.
Yeah. Thank you. My pleasure. Much love.
Big love back. Big hug. Bye-bye.
Okay, big hug. Bye-bye.